My twin sister married my fiancé while I was in a coma. Now she's 6 months pregnant with his baby. On the morning I finally woke up from my coma, the nurse changing my IV smiled and said, "It's so sweet your husband never left your side. Daniel really loves you." I blinked at her, throat dry, and croaked, "My husband?" Later that day, my twin sister walked into my hospital room wearing my favorite sweatshirt, holding my old phone and a diamond ring that looked exactly like the one I remembered on my own hand. Only now, the ring was on her finger. Under the baggy sweatshirt, there was something else I couldn't miss. A very obvious 6-month baby bump. I didn't scream. I didn't rip out my IV and throw a fit. I made one small change. I asked her to hand me my phone so I could check my email, and quietly opened the calendar, the photos, and the courthouse website app. That's how I found out my twin sister had married my fiancé while I was in a coma, and was 6 months pregnant with his child. My name is Ava. I'm 29 years old, and I'm from a suburb just outside Boston, Massachusetts. I have a twin sister named Zoe. We're identical on the outside, but we were never the same on the inside. I was the reliable one. She was the sparkly one. Teachers loved having us in class until they realized one of us had done all the group work and the other had done all the talking. Our parents always joked, "Ava will have the sensible life, Zoe will have the stories." Until last year, that felt about right. I worked as an ICU nurse. Steady job, weird hours, lots of coffee. My fiancé, Daniel, is a physical therapist. We met at the hospital. He was the one who brought me granola bars at 3 a.m. on double shifts. We'd been together 4 years when he proposed. It wasn't dramatic. No flash mobs or hidden photographers. He asked me on a quiet Sunday morning in the tiny kitchen of our rental while I was making pancakes. He slid the ring across the counter and said, "I don't want to do any of this without you. Marry me?" I said yes with flour on my cheek. Zoe was thrilled. Or at least, that's how it looked. She shrieked when I showed her the ring. "I knew it," she said. "Can I please be your maid of honor? I have a whole Pinterest board. You will have the best bachelorette party in history." We started planning. Venue booked, dress shopped, deposit paid. The date, October 12th. I remember it now the way you remember a number tattooed on someone else's skin. 2 months before the wedding, everything changed. It was an ordinary shift for me. 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. I'd been having headaches for weeks. Blinding, righty behind of the eyes headaches. Like someone had shoved a balloon into my skull and kept inflating it. I kept telling myself it was the stress, the wedding, the overtime, the constant family group chat about centerpieces. Zoe would say things like, "You're always so tense, you should let me handle the fun stuff." I brushed it off. That night, I was halfway through my rounds when the world tilted. The fluorescent lights in the hallway blurred. My vision tunneled. The last thing I remember is grabbing the side rail of a patient's bed and saying, "I don't feel..." Then nothing. According to the colleagues who later filled in the blanks, I collapsed. My coworkers went from nurses to emergency responders in half a second. They did a CT scan. Found a ruptured brain aneurysm. Within an hour, I was in neurosurgery. The doctor later told my parents, "We're going to do everything we can, but you need to prepare for the possibility that she may not wake up. If she does, her cognitive function may be severely impaired." I wasn't there for that conversation. I was under anesthesia, down in a dark, quiet place my mind went to, without my permission. Zoe got the call in the middle of a dress fitting. She told me later she stared at the veil in her hand and thought, "She's supposed to be wearing this, not lying in a hospital bed." Daniel raced to the hospital. He signed consent forms with shaking hands. My parents arrived an hour later, white-faced. The surgery saved my life. The coma almost stole it. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. My body was technically alive. My brain? Floating in between. They tell me, in those early days, there were small signs. A squeeze of a hand. A twitch. An eyelid. Enough to keep hope alive. Not enough to call it awake. The wedding was postponed indefinitely. The deposits were mostly lost. My dress hung in my parents' guest room closet, still in the garment bag. I don't remember any of that. For me, it was like someone cut a film reel. One frame, me in the ICU hallway, reaching for a bed rail. Next frame, waking up to a nurse calling Daniel my husband. Everything in between, somebody else had lived in my place. And in that time, apparently, my twin sister decided to live my life. When I woke up, it was like breaking through ice. Sound came first. Beeping. Murmuring voices. Someone saying, "Pupils reactive. Good." Then feeling. Weight of blankets. Plastic tug of an IV. Scratchy dryness in my throat. Then sight. Fluorescent light. A smudge of a face. A nurse. She noticed my eyes open and smiled. Well, hello, she said. Welcome back. I tried to speak. It came out as a croak. She brought water, helped me sip. Don't rush it, she said. You've been out for a while. How long? I whispered. Let the doctor explain that, she said gently. For now, just rest. You're safe. She adjusted my monitor, then added, I'll let your husband know you're awake. He's been here every day. My husband. For a second, hope flared. Daniel? I rasped. She nodded. He practically lives here, she said fondly. You picked a good one. My heart squeezed. I'd gone under as a fiancé. I was waking up to a world where, apparently, I had a husband. The doctor came in next. Explained, in calm, rehearsed tones. I'd had a ruptured aneurysm. Emergency surgery. Complicated recovery. An 8-month coma. 8 months. My wedding date had come and gone. Halloween. Christmas. My birthday. All slipped past while I lay still. Recovery will be a marathon, not a sprint, he said. But the fact that you're awake and oriented is, honestly, Ava, a miracle. My parents came in after that. My mom sobbed. My dad, who never cried, wiped his eyes openly. They hugged me gently, careful of tubes and wires. We thought we'd lost you, my mom whispered. You came back. I looked around. No, Daniel. Is he here? I asked. The nurse said. My dad's face flickered. He stepped out to get coffee, he said quickly. He's been here a lot. We'll get him. It was a small lie. I didn't catch it then. A few hours later, Zoe walked in. For a second, in my groggy state, I thought I was looking at myself in a mirror. Same dark hair. Same eyes. Same face. But different. She'd lost weight. Her hair was shorter. She was wearing an oversized sweatshirt and leggings. And on her left hand was a familiar glint. A solitaire diamond in a simple platinum setting. It looked exactly like my engagement ring. But my hand was bare. I lifted it weakly. Did they take it off for surgery? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Zoe's eyes filled with tears. She sank into the chair by my bed and grabbed my hand. Oh, Ava, she said. I'm so glad you're awake. You scared us so much. Is that my ring? I asked, nodding at her hand. She looked down, then back at me, guilt flickering in her expression. It was, she said. Now it's mine. The room tilted again. Mine, how? I asked slowly. She took a deep breath. Please, just let me explain before you freak out, she said. Everything got complicated while you were under. Before she could, there was a knock. Pop, our grandfather, appeared in the doorway. He was in his 80s, stooped, but sharp-reed. He'd always been the quiet observer in our loud family. Can I see her? He asked. Of course, Zoe said quickly, standing to hug him. He shuffled in, took my hand in both of his. Welcome back, kiddo, he said softly. You took the scenic route. I tried to smile. I'm confused, I admitted. They keep saying your husband and Zoe is wearing my ring and I don't know what happened. He glanced at Zoe. Her jaw tightened. We should wait until the doctor clears how much stress she can handle, she said. She just woke up, Pop. That's not your call, he said mildly, and hiding the truth never protected anyone in this family. Zoe's eyes flashed. I'm not hiding anything, she snapped. I'm trying to be kind. Kindness starts with honesty, he replied. Their argument buzzed around me. I focused on a detail I'd just noticed. A slight swell under Zoe's sweatshirt. Not huge, but unmistakable if you knew what to look for. Are you pregnant? I asked. The room went silent. Zoe exhaled. Yes, she said. 6 months. 6 months. I did the math, clumsy and slow. I'd been in a coma 8. My wedding would have been 7 months ago. You're married, I said. Wearing my ring. 6 months pregnant. I looked at Pop, then at Sue, then at my parents hovering in the doorway, faces pale. Who did you marry? I asked, already knowing and praying I was wrong. Zoe swallowed. Daniel, she said. The monitor next to me beeped faster. My vision tunneled again. Pop put a hand on my arm. Breathe, he said. Slow. In through your nose. Out through your mouth. I obeyed automatically. Nurse instincts, even in my own bed. When the beeping calmed slightly, I whispered. Why? Zoe wiped her eyes. Because they told us you were gone, she said, and we were both drowning. The doctor gently suggested everyone leave so I could rest. Pop ignored him. Let her decide, he said. Ava, do you want them to stay or go? I looked at Zoe, at my parents, at the ring on her hand. At least, tell me the story, I said hoarsely. Then I'll tell you if I want you to go. Zoe nodded, sat back down. My parents hovered near the foot of the bed. Pop pulled up a chair and listened, eyes narrowed. Zoe started talking. At first, we thought you'd wake up in a few days, she said. Then weeks. Then the doctors started saying months. They told us you might never wake up. Or if you did, you might not be you anymore. Her voice shook. We sat here, she went on, day after day. Me, Mom, Dad, Daniel, we watched you lie there with tubes everywhere. We watched machines breathe for you. We watched birthdays and holidays pass. She swallowed. After 3 months, you got moved out of ICU to a long-term care floor, she said. The insurance got weird. The neurologist said there was very little change in your scans. He used the phrase, persistent vegetative state. My stomach clenched. They said we needed to start thinking about long-term placement, my dad added quietly. A facility, a home, somewhere you could be cared for if you stayed like that. Zoe nodded. Daniel was a wreck, she said. He still came every day, brought your favorite lotion, played your playlists, read you silly articles. But he was fading. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping. His boss put him on leave. She looked at me. He loved you, she said. Still does, in his way. That's not a lie. Pop cleared his throat. Get to the part where love turned into marriage, he said dryly. Zoe flinched. After about 5 months, she said slowly, your neurologist called a family meeting. Me, Mom, Dad, Daniel. He showed us your latest scans. Said there was no significant improvement, that at that point most patients who were going to wake had already shown more signs. He didn't say it was impossible, he just didn't sound hopeful. He never said you were brain dead, Pop interjected. That's important. I know, Zoe said, but it felt like it. We were tired, raw. We started talking about things we never thought we'd have to talk about, living wills, guardianship. Whether you'd want to live like that if you could answer. She looked at me. They asked me if you and Daniel had ever talked about what to do if one of you was incapacitated, she said. I said no, because we hadn't. Not in those exact words. She took a deep breath. Daniel started pulling away from everyone, she said. Stayed later at the hospital, but not always in your room. He'd just wander the halls. One night, I found him in the chapel, sitting in the dark. Her eyes blurred. He told me he felt guilty for still being alive, she said. For wanting normal things, to laugh, to go to a movie, to not spend every waking moment in a room full of machines. She brushed away a tear. I told him, I understood, she said. Because I did. I loved you. You're my other half. But I also hated you a little, for leaving me alone with all of this. That admission surprised me. And then? I asked. And then? Lines blurred, she said. We started getting dinner after hospital visits. At first we talked about you. About medical stuff. Then about work. TV shows. Stupid memes. She laughed weakly. One night, after too much wine, he said, You make it easier to breathe, she recalled. I said, You do too. He kissed me. I kissed him back. We both cried. I felt sick. Were you with him before I collapsed? I asked. She shook her head violently. No, she said. Never, I swear. Whatever else you think of me, I did not cheat with your fiancé while you were conscious. It only happened after, when everyone kept telling us you weren't really there anymore. Pop watched her face. For what it's worth, I believed that part. It didn't make what came next okay. But it changed the shape of the betrayal. After that, we tried to pull back, Zoe went on. We both felt awful, guilty. Like we'd spat on your bed. But we also couldn't deny that something was there. That being together hurt and helped at the same time. She looked at my parents. Mom found out first, she said. She walked in on us holding hands in the hallway. She freaked out. Then, after a while, she started saying things like, Life goes on. Ava wouldn't want you to be alone forever. My mom winced. It's true, she said quietly. I said that. I thought, if you never woke up, would I want him to sit by your bed until he was old and bitter? Or would I want him to have some happiness? I told myself I knew the answer. Pop's jaw tightened. You told yourself what was easiest, he said. My dad said nothing. We didn't plan to get married, Zoe continued. Not at first. We just leaned on each other. Too much. Then, one night, Daniel's mom called him and said, You have to move on, honey. She's gone. He told her I was still breathing, I said bitterly. She said, Her body is. The rest is a shell, Zoe replied. He told me about it after. We were both drunk. We started talking about, what if? What if we made it official? What if we gave each other some kind of anchor? She took a shaky breath. 6 months after your aneurysm, she said, we went to the courthouse. Me, him, Mom, and Dad. We signed the papers. It wasn't a big wedding, just rings and signatures. They pronounced us married. We went back to the hospital that night and sat with you like we always did. And nobody thought to ask my consent, I said, my voice paper-thin. To anything. Silence. A monitor beeped steadily. 2 months after that, I found out I was pregnant, Zoe said softly. On what would have been your original wedding date. The irony made my stomach hurt. Did you ever think I'd wake up? I asked. Really? Zoe wiped her nose. I prayed you would, she said. I also planned my life like you wouldn't, because that's what everyone told us to do. Pop leaned forward. And what did you tell yourself about what would happen if she did wake up? He asked. Zoe looked at him. Then at me. Then down at her hands. I didn't let myself think about it, she admitted, because I knew there was no version where it didn't hurt you. Over the next few days, my body worked on healing. My mind worked on not exploding. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy all came in shifts. So did my family. I noticed patterns. My parents never came at the same time as Daniel. Zoe always showed up with him. Pop came alone. At odd hours. The first time Daniel walked into my room, Zoe trailing behind, my heart did something weird. It remembered loving him and hated him at the same time. He looked older. Dark circles. More gray at his temples. He stood at the doorway for a second, then approached slowly. Hey, he said, voice rough. You look better than last time I saw you. Last time, my eyes were closed, I said. He huffed a nervous laugh. True, he said. Can I? He gestured to the side of my bed. I nodded. He sat. Zoe hovered in the corner, hand on her belly. Zoe told you, he said, that you married her and got her pregnant while I was in a coma? I replied. Yes, she did. He flinched. I'm so sorry, he said. There are no words that make it okay. You're right, I said. There aren't. He swallowed. I never stopped caring about you, he added. That sounds hollow, but it's true. I didn't marry Zoe because I stopped loving you. I married her because I thought I lost you, and I was drowning, and she was the only one in the water with me. I stared at him. How poetic, I said flatly. You two clung to each other on the wreckage of my life. He didn't argue. Pop visited that night. He brought his old leather satchel. I went to the courthouse, he said without preamble, picked up some public records. He pulled out a copy of my advance directive, the healthcare proxy form I'd filled out when I started working in the ICU, the marriage certificate. I frowned at the first document. I don't remember filling that out, I said. You did 3 years ago, Pop said. I drove you. You were freaked out after a patient case and decided you didn't want your fate left to chance. I scanned it. In my own handwriting. If I am in a prolonged unconscious state with little chance of meaningful recovery, I do not wish extraordinary measures to be continued indefinitely. In the proxy section, primary decision maker, Ava, last name. Secondary, Zoe, last name. Tertiary, Daniel, last name. Look at that, Pop said. You didn't put your fiancé first. I blinked. I thought I did, I said. You told me then, he said, that you loved Daniel, but you didn't want a romantic partner making choices out of guilt or panic. You put your sister. Because you said she knew you best, and she didn't owe you anything the way a spouse might feel they did. Zoe, sitting in the visitor chair, listened, pale. You had legal power to make decisions about her care, Pop said to her. Not about who you married, but about things like withdrawing life support, moving her to a facility. You signed off on treatments. You signed off on not moving her to that cheaper faraway center. He tapped the paper. You never signed anything saying let her go, he said. Because she didn't meet her own criteria. The doctors hedged. They didn't call it hopeless. So you kept her here, but you let everyone talk as if she was already gone. Zoe looked like she might throw up. I thought I was honoring what she'd written, she said weakly. I didn't want to give up too soon. I thought Daniel needed something solid. Marriage. A family. Something to stand on while we waited for you to either come back or not. Pop laid the marriage certificate next to my directive. 2 dates. My advance directive, 3 years before my coma. Their marriage, 6 months after my coma. You signed this while she was still alive, still on feeds, still on ventilators, still having small responses to your voice, he said to Daniel and Zoe later when they were both in the room. You chose not to wait for clarity. Daniel rubbed his temples. If we'd waited for clarity, he said, we'd still be waiting. That's the point, Pop said. You didn't want to sit with uncertainty, so you made it certain on paper. That's your right, but don't pretend you were forced. I looked at the documents lined up. My past self, who'd tried to think ahead. My family's choices, based on doctors' estimates and their own exhaustion. My twins' new life, legally sealed, attached to the man I'd planned to marry. Where does that leave me? I asked quietly. Legally, emotionally, practically. Legally, it was simple. I had no marriage certificate with Daniel, only an engagement. Emotionally, it was a minefield. Practically, I had months of rehab ahead. No job yet, I'd have to requalify for some tasks. A rental lease that had lapsed. And a twin sister who was 6 months pregnant with the man I'd once imagined raising kids with. Pop closed the folder. It leaves you with choices, he said, more than you think. What choices? I asked. He ticked them off gently. You can decide how much you want either of them in your life, he said. You can decide where you want to live. You can decide whether you want to fight to work again, or take time, or change careers. You can decide, most importantly, that you are no one's placeholder. His eyes softened. They wrote a story where you died, he said. You're alive. You get to write a different ending. It doesn't have to include them. That thought had never fully occurred to me. That my life going forward didn't have to orbit around their choices. I stared at Zoe. At her bump. At the ring. If you could go back, I asked her, knowing I'd wake up exactly like this, would you still have married him? She looked wrecked. I don't know, she whispered. I want to say no, but the truth is, in that moment, I chose what felt like survival. For me, for him, for the version of you I thought was gone. That's the thing, I said. You chose survival for yourselves, not for me. I'm the one who almost died, and you turned my Nero death into your permission slip. Daniel spoke quietly. If you want me out of your life forever, say the word, he said. I'll respect it. I don't deserve forgiveness. He was right. He didn't. The question was whether I wanted to spend the rest of my life actively hating him, or just letting go. It's been a year since I woke up from my coma and found my twin sister married to my fiancé and 6 months pregnant. A year of physical rehab, legal paperwork, therapy, and more uncomfortable family conversations than I thought possible. Here's where things stand now. Daniel. 2 months after I woke up, he filed for divorce from Zoe. That might sound like a satisfying twist. It wasn't. He didn't do it for me. He did it because he realized, too late, that he'd made a life-altering decision in a state of unresolved grief he'd never really examined. I married you to get away from the hospital, he told Zoe, in one particularly brutal session we had with a mediator. Not because I loved you in the way you deserved. He and I didn't get back together. I surprised even myself with how clear that felt. I can forgive you someday, I told him. But I can't unknow that, when things got hard, you broke our promise in the one way I can't build on. We divided what little we'd had jointly, some shared savings, furniture. He moved to another city eventually. Last I heard, he's in a quiet, boring relationship with a woman who met him as the divorced guy with baggage, not as my ex-fiancé. In some odd way, that feels right. Zoe. She had a little girl. Healthy, loud, with big eyes like ours. Watching my twin sister give birth to the child I once thought I'd be having with her husband was surreal. I didn't go to the hospital. I saw photos later. We're not close. We're not fully estranged, either. We exist somewhere in the middle ground where she sends me baby pictures. I send a happy birthday text to my niece. We see each other at family gatherings and keep conversation to safe topics. She apologized more than once. Not with excuses. Just with, I chose myself at your expense. I thought you were gone. That doesn't make it okay. I will spend the rest of my life living with that. I don't know yet if I'll ever feel what people call full forgiveness. What I do feel is distance. And in that distance, a kind of peace. My parents, they had to face some ugly truths too. They realized they'd been too quick to accept the doctor's worst-case scenarios as fact. Too eager to push Zoe and Daniel together to avoid their own grief. Too willing to emotionally bury me while my body was still warm. They apologized. They did the hard work of not just saying, "We're sorry," but changing. They stopped saying, "We thought you were gone," like it was a justification. They started saying, "We were wrong. We rushed to rewrite you out of our story because sitting in the not knowing was too painful for us." Our relationship is better than I expected. Closer in some ways. Because it's honest now. Not based on me being the strong one, and them leaning on me. They lean on Pop more now. He seems pleased. Pop. He's still my favorite person. He moved in with me for a while when I first got out of rehab. Not because I couldn't manage alone, but because he wanted to. You need someone to make bad jokes while you learn to walk properly again, he said. He also helped me do something big. I bought a small condo. In my own name. With my own money and a bit of help from his savings. I helped you once when you almost married the wrong man, he said, signing the check. I'll help you again now that you're marrying yourself to your own life. It's not the house Daniel and I once dreamed of. It's smaller, quieter. Mine. Me. I didn't go back to ICU nursing. The fluorescent lights and monitor beeps felt too much like the ceiling I woke up to. Instead, I shifted to outpatient care. Day shifts. Regular hours. Time for physical therapy for patients, not me. Yoga. A pottery class Pop signed us up for and then bailed on. I also did individual therapy. A lot of it. I had to unpack. Survivor's guilt. Betrayal. The strange grief of losing a version of my life that never actually happened: the wedding, the kids with Daniel, the shared future we'd planned. My therapist asked me, early on, if your coma had never happened, do you think these people would have eventually betrayed you anyway? Or did the pressure reveal something that would have stayed hidden in a calmer life? I didn't know. I still don't. What I do know now is this. The coma didn't just change my brain. It changed how I see love. I used to think, true love means someone will wait for you no matter what. Family means they'd never move on until they have a clear, official death certificate for you. Now I think, people are fragile, scared, flawed. They do selfish things when they're hurting. That doesn't make what they did to me okay. But waiting for other people's loyalty to be perfect is a good way to never trust again. So here's the line I come back to, the one I want you to hear if you're watching this, because some title about betrayal pulled you in. When someone shows you they were willing to replace you while you were still breathing, even barely, you are allowed to replace them in your life with people who don't need you to be gone to choose you. And you don't owe anyone a second chance at the role they abandoned. You can forgive from a distance and still keep the door locked. Do I wish my twin hadn't married my fiancé? Yes. Do I wish I'd never had the aneurysm? Of course. But if you took this whole mess away, you'd also be taking away the version of me who knows she can survive losing almost everything. The version of me who bought a home alone. The version of me who can look in the mirror and say, I chose myself finally, and mean it. I didn't get the wedding I wanted. I got something else. A life that is wholly, quietly, stubbornly mine. And this time, I'm awake for all of it. So that's how I went from planning a wedding with my fiancé to waking up from a coma 8 months later and finding out my twin sister had married him and was 6 months pregnant with his baby. It was the ugliest plot twist I've ever lived through. But it also forced me to ask the hardest question. If everyone else has already written you out of the story, how do you write yourself back in without centering them? If you've been through any kind of betrayal like this, partner choosing someone else, family closing ranks without you, I hope you'll take this with you. You are allowed to rebuild a life that isn't about proving them wrong. You're allowed to rebuild a life that's just about you. Now I want to know, if you were in my place waking up to find your twin sister married your fiancé while you were in a coma, what would you have done? Cut them both off forever? Stayed close for the sake of the baby? Tried to forgive and rebuild? Tell me in the comments. I read as many as I can, and your stories really do help other people who are going through their own versions of this. And if you like long, calm story times about real relationships, family drama, and choosing yourself after the worst happens, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Your support helps us keep making these deep dive videos for you.